This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 875 of Horse Tip Daily. A different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you, one day at a time. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today, Dressage Radio Show co-hosts Reese Koffler-Stanfield and Philip Parks answer a listener question about horse shopping, managing expectations, taking a test ride, and advice on getting advice. And we'll get right to our tip after this shopping tip from Statelinetack.com. When the weather forecast calls for wind, rain, bone-chilling temperatures, or snow, look no further than Statelinetack.com to make sure your barn time is warm, dry, and stylish. Statelinetack.com has jackets and vests that keep you warm and dry from afternoon hacks in New England to break of dawn schooling sessions in Wellington. They also carry a wide selection of toasty warm breeches for schooling ring or show ring. They even have waterproof breeches for those days when Mother Nature is at her worst. And Statelinetack.com knows there's nothing more satisfying than having warm, dry feet at the barn. So they have beautiful winter boots for showing, weather-busting paddock boots for on the horse or off, and lots of rubber boots for mucking about. Surf over to Statelinetack.com today and choose from your favorite brands like Ariat, Debonair, Dublin, Mountain Horse, Carrots, Tough Rider, and many, many more. Statelinetack.com.
Well, Reese, I think that was a pretty good show. We're not quite done yet. We got an email, which is awesome. So,
yay!
One of the listeners had a question, a trainer tip type question. So I'm just going to read the email, and then we can talk about it.
Great.
It says, would love to hear a trainer's tip on how to try a prospective sales horse on the first and second ride. Not the obvious things like bring your trainer, but maybe some specifics about how to evaluate the ride and the partnership that will be in the future. What are some of the pitfalls in the evaluation to avoid? And all the help we can give her. This is Jean Rudy on trial rides. This is a good question, actually, because I've got to do some trial rides coming up this week before I leave for a client who is looking for a new horse. This is kind of the time of the year that we do it as well here after kind of the show season and people are thinking of getting a new horse. So, Reese, how about you... You take
I'll start us off. I'd be happy to. So I think number one and this is, Europe versus America. In Europe, we could do a whole show on shopping in Europe, but I think in general, you need to make sure you have a quality agent that you're working for and or somebody that can speak the language from someone that has lived there. And you too, Philip, like I have seen some deals go really badly and, at the time, I was only speaking English, but I was fluent in German. So I heard some things and ended two deals that were because they were trying to pull some wool over my client's eyes. So, or it wasn't even a client, it was a friend. Right. So I think it's important to take, number one, a qualified and reputable agent if you're going to Europe. Number one, it doesn't have to be a trainer. But I think you need somebody that speaks the language and somebody to be your representative. So there are good people. There are bad people too, just like in America. And so you need to know that. So that's my first about Europe is it's great to find Europe, but you need a reputable agent over there to kind of watch your back a little bit. But when it comes to trying horses in general, and this is Europe, but in the U.S. too, I've certainly, or Canada, I certainly have had really good luck in the U.S. recently. So I always look stateside or in the continent before I start going overseas. I don't know how you feel, Philip, about that, but I start there and then go to Europe if need be, and it's very needed. I think I actually have a trip this winter to do. which is awesome. I love shopping in Europe. I'm not going to lie. But here's the thing. Like, I think when you try a horse, number one, everybody's expectations need to be clear. You know, what are you using the horse for? Is it for an adult amateur? Is it for a professional? Is it for an adult amateur that has professional help all the time? That's important to know. So there's certain things that I do when I get on a horse in general. First of all, I want to feel how the horse is in the contact. I personally do not like horses that are strong. I had one when I was younger as a young rider that was so strong. He hurt my back every day. So I don't do strong. So that's the number one. If they're strong and locked in the contact, for me, that's not a desirable trait. So I like to feel how they feel in the contact, and then I like to feel how they feel off my leg. You know, if I'm looking for myself, I want something that's going to be quite hot off my leg. If I'm looking for an adult amateur, however, I feel that that's a little different. I don't necessarily want them to be super hot, depending on the amateur. Again, it's a range. So that's the first two things that I check. I check sort of stop and go, how they are in the contact. And then from there, I proceed on to doing exercises. I do shoulder in, haunches in, changes if that's what I'm looking for, in an upper level horse. And are there issues? You know, can the horse bend left and right? That's important. Are the changes clean? That's a big deal. When I ride changes, sometimes I try to just sit up there and not do anything. And what happens, without any major work? Just go across the diagonal and move your legs and see what happens. I think that's important. If I'm trying young horses, you know, I also want to see how that horse is maybe inside. I always take the horses outside if that's available. I always take them out to walk somewhere, if it's around the barn even, or on a trail ride, you know, or just in the field, which would be what we would do. I try to do that. So I try to do a ride variety of things with those horses. If you can, I try to take off my jacket. I know that sounds stupid, but I've had horses that aren't good about that. So those are some things that I do on a regular basis when I try horses. But again, you know, I think where people get in trouble is expectations. And what do you need the horse for? What are you looking for? Philip, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, that's all really good stuff. I was just trying to think, you know, when I go, I mean, what I really try, you know, what's my advice here is just when I sit on the horse for the first time, I try and do as little as possible. Yeah. You know, I kind of throw away the contact, just put my leg on, like just really, really basics, and I try and let the horse tell me what's their personality, what are they going to try and do, right? So, you know, when you sit on, like, you know, I ride a lot of horses every day, and I train a lot of horses every day, but I try and get on a prospective horse and not train it, which is tough. It's kind of like turning yourself off a little bit and just saying, I'm just going to kind of ride you, and you tell me how you go, right? Instead of like getting on and going, oh, you weren't quick enough, or, oh, you know, I got to fix that. I say, I don't fix anything. I just say, what's this horse like, you know? If I let the contact go and I put my leg on and the horse runs away, then I say, okay, this is a horse that wants to run away, you know. And it's hard to evaluate that if you're a trainer, because you just want to get on and train, right? And say, oh, don't do that, or, you know, do this or that. So I do my best to really ride as I think my amateur is going to ride. Like, you know, if I have an amateur that's not too educated with the hand or whatever, then I just kind of try and simulate that, and then, you know, yes. And then just go through and do the exercises. If the person tells me, okay, this, you know, I'm going to see a second level horse, then I'm going to do everything from second level, right? And I'm not going to train the horse. I'm just going to try and ride some shoulder in, right? Not tell the horse how to do the. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain, but not try and tell the horse how to do shoulder in, but just kind of point it across the diagonal, or point it, you know, and push it down the wall and see if it does it, right? What I really try not to do also is to say, okay, this person has told me it's a second level horse, and then try and ride it third level. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Sometimes your client goes, well, will it do third level, Phil? Like, you know, they say, I have no idea. They've told me it does second level, I'm going to try to do second. If it doesn't do second level, then, you know, when they told me it does second level, then I'm like, okay, this is not making sense, and maybe this is not a good purchase, right? So, you know, try not to train the horse, or try not to try and evaluate, you know, if if I think it could do third level at some point somewhere down the road. I mean, you get into a lot of problems, in having discussions with the person you're buying the horse with and also the person you're buying the horse for, because, you can say, I think it will do third level or I think it'll do St. George. I don't know that, right? Like nobody knows that. Nobody can tell you that, because you have to walk down that road and then try and figure it out. Like after doing a ride or two rides, you can say, to the best of my knowledge and in the horses that I've had experience with, yes, I think it could do. Like it's just so difficult. It really is a tough thing, and you kind of get stuck as the trainer. But I think what I tell people, you go and you look at the horse and it's a beautiful horse and it has an awesome trot, but don't overlook the walk, right? I mean, stuff like that where it's like, oh, but he's got such a great trot, and then it's like, yes, but there's problems in the walk or there's problems in the canter. Well, can't you fix that? Well, no.
Maybe.
I've got it. Maybe.
Maybe.
Right? That's a maybe. That's a big maybe. So, when you're buying a horse, I think you got to try and write down some things that say these things are really important to me, and I will not overlook them. Here's a list of things that I'd like, but maybe are not as important, and I could overlook, right? And here's some things that like are not important at all, right? And so I try and get my buyer to kind of look at those things, right? And get into some specifics, right? And then you can kind of narrow down your list of horses and figure it out. But I think people get into a lot of trouble, and it's just a very difficult thing. So.
No, I think that was a really good idea. I mean, we especially in Europe, because you're tired anyways, because you probably get off the plane and you go right to horse shopping. You think it's a European vacation, but it's actually a lot of work. And I tell people, this is silly, but if you haven't ridden before you go to Europe and you're looking for a horse, please ride. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but you're going to be on the plane for 8 hours. You're going to get off. It's morning, and you're going to want to start shopping. So, typically in Europe, you see maybe 8 or 10 a day sometimes, depending on the horses. So I always have a notebook. And that is true if I am going down the road. Like, what did I like about this horse? What are things that I don't like about this horse? And I know this is silly to say this, but I always get a feeling if it's the right horse or not. It's sort of like, I say to my clients, it's kind of like finding a husband in a way. Or Philip finding a lady, depending on where you're going. Yeah. You kind of know, like, okay, I want to go. I can't wait for my second date. And then there's some where you're like, yeah, I just didn't feel it. If you don't feel it, it's probably not going to change. And I think some people overlook that. Like, what are some positive? What are negatives? There are going to be negatives on every horse. It's just like every person you date or go or marry, there's going to be some negatives. But what can you live with? What can you not live with? And write it down, when you get back in your car or whatever, however you want to write it down, so you can remember, and especially in Europe because you see a lot. And then, if you don't love it, don't bring it out again. I'm
That's
very
right.
much.
Yeah, I mean, you see that quite a bit. Like, oh, he was pretty good, and and then you're just, just buy the horse that feels right for you, right?
Right. Right.
The rider, like as a trainer and a rider, you can evaluate, a lot of things and give advice, but in the end, it does have to be your decision. Don't get pushed into a horse that you don't like.
Correct.
Or that you're not feeling the love, right?
Right.
Because
if you don't feel it right away, it's not going to get better.
It'll be your horse. It will not be your trainer's horse.
Right.
And
exactly.
you see that a little bit. Where the trainers, oh, this is a great horse, and maybe they're thinking for themselves, right? Like that's a little bit of a love factor that can happen. I mean, you got to ride the horse every day. You sit
and you've got to groom it, and you've got to
deal with
take it to the horse show and feed it, and I think that's really important. And my other sort of pet peeve, and I think people feel really uncomfortable, if you don't like the horse, when you see someone on it, tell them you don't like it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it drives me crazy when people are like, well, I didn't really like that horse, but I rode him anyways. Well, okay, but
a little bit of a waste of time.
It's a waste of everybody's time. It's a waste of the horse's time, number one, and then it's a waste of the trainer's time, and then the trainer typically has to go back and rewrite it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think people always feel a little awkward when they're buying horses, like, oh, we brought the horse out, I should sit on it. If you don't like it, say it.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I've had lots of different situations in selling a horse, and I appreciate it. You don't think it's for you? Great. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean it's a bad horse.
Exactly.
I mean, and I don't really take it as a reflection.
Nope.
On my training or on my riding or whatever. I mean, as a trainer, we get lots of horses in for sale. I'm there's somebody else's horse, right? So, or even if it's my own horse, I ride a lot of horses. You don't necessarily like that horse. That's great.
No big deal.
No big deal.
No, I think that's the one question I get a lot. Well, what if I don't like it? Well, if you don't like it, say it. And it may be something silly. It may be the horse's shape of his ears, whatever. It doesn't matter. If I'm just picking.
If you're not going to buy it, then
don't.
Or if you're not thinking of buying it, or it's just
don't feel bad about it.
Don't feel bad. People, people understand. I understand. I don't get offended. It's great.
Nope.
So, I think there's no, going back to the email, I think there's no specific exercise that I get on and say, if I do this, and if I don't, if the horse doesn't do that I don't buy it.
Right.
No. I think every horse is unique, and every horse does the job in a little bit of a different way. So all I have to do is kind of marry the horse to the rider. Right? Marry the horse to the job that he's supposed to do. And then, kind of think of the price after that. Right? Because I don't get caught up in prices like, oh, this horse is $30,000 and that horse is $20,000. Obviously the $30,000. No, maybe the $20,000 horse will be perfect for you.
Right.
Buy that one.
Yeah. Save yourself some money.
Yeah, save yourself some money. Don't second guess yourself. Like you get a lot. Well, I really like that one, but should I like that one? No, you like that one. Great. This is, and then go and talk to your trainer and get good advice. Get good advice. I mean, the other thing about advice, if it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right.
Yeah.
True. Just because I know a lot about horses and I know quite a bit about training, if it doesn't sound right to you, maybe the advice is not great. It's just a hard thing to try and find the right horse for
it is
for
a very hard
thing.
thing.
And it takes a lot of time, and it takes seeing quite a few horses.
Yep. And I also tell people to do a lot of internet shopping. I have spent millions on the computer. I think that's, educate yourself a little bit about, what does a fourth level gelding who's 13 cost. You can find that pretty easily on the internet and figure that out. Yeah. So sort of about price, about it's pretty easy now to go online, but you do need to research a little bit before you go to Europe or before you go in the US and you can find out a lot that way. So and the other thing is, ride your friends' horses. I mean, I think that it is daunting when when you're not having certain people, when you don't ride a lot of horses, and it's daunting to be like, oh, I have to go ride other horses. Well, call some friends up, ride some other horses, that type of thing. I think that's a really good idea.
I mean, again, and you don't have to be a great rider to buy a horse.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, don't get nervous. Like, you're the rider you are, and you come to a trial being that rider. Just be that rider. Just take a deep breath and go for it. And if the horse, if it's supposed to be for an amateur rider, it should be safe. It doesn't give you a safe feeling, that's not your fault, right?
Get off.
Get off.
Get off. It, again, doesn't hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, and again, I certainly sit on a lot of horses. I don't get along with 100% of horses I sit on. And, I'm not going to try and, go to somebody's place and train their horse. I just say, you know what, I just don't get a great feeling. That's all there is to it. It doesn't mean it's a bad horse. Doesn't even mean the training is good or bad or whatever. I don't get along with it. That's
right. And I think really your gut feeling is important. And I tell people, you'll know in your gut a little bit if it's the right horse. That's how I kind of know right away. I know, I always say, can I envision that horse in my barn? And when I buy a horse for a client, my thing is, when you go on vacation, am I going to want to ride that horse and feed that horse and take care of him? That's sort of what I ask myself. And that's like the question I ask myself. Like, am I going to look forward to coming in that barn and sitting on that horse every day? Yeah. And if I say no, well, then I don't even look at it. Or if there's something in me that says, yeah. So those are some advice, and it really, we could do a whole show. We could do 3 shows on this topic. It's a tricky topic to try horses. It really is, but always go with somebody you trust, and always have, your expectations of what you want the horse to do, and have, do your research. And I think you can always be successful that way.
You can do your best anyways. I mean, it's never going to work out 100% of the time, for everyone all the time. They are
animals.
I think it just stuff happens, and that's life, and you can get the best advice and you can do the best job, and sometimes things just get a little messed up, and that's the way it is, right? True. When you're buying cars, sometimes you buy a car and the thing breaks down the next week. It's just, you did the best you could, and then you move on. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, hopefully
Thank you so much for the email, and we love it. We love to get on a discussion and get on a topic. Like Reese said, we could talk about this for hours probably. But, we have to cut ourselves off once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when we don't have a producer that kind of will send us a message, guys, it's enough. So,
And that's a wrap. You can find lots more tips on topics ranging from barn care to websites for horse people at horsetipdaily.com. Just look for the topics drop-down menu on the left. And now you can have all of the Horse Radio Network shows with you wherever you go with our new free app for iPhone and Android. Just go to your app store and search for Horse Radio Network. And don't forget to support our sponsors here on Horse Tip Daily, because they really do make these podcasts possible. Today's podcast has been brought to you through the generous support of StatelineTack.com. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.